All right. Good morning to our folks in the United States and good morning to our colleagues in India. Today we have our second session on, excuse me, for our UI Assist project. We have today's session will be part 2 of our theme 6 activities on DSO functions and energy management. We will have 5 presenters and each presenter will go about 25 minutes. We are asking everyone to put their questions in the chat, and then we will go from the chat. We'll be able to, at the end of each talk, just to make sure our speakers are able to get through their talk. So our first speaker will be Hong Da from Washington State University. So I'm going to just turn it over to Hong Da. So Hong Da.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning, everyone. I will share my screen. Good morning, everyone. Great opportunity to present here. I'm Hong Da from Washington State University. My advisor is Professor Noah Schultz. My today's topic is about water control and optimization. We're focusing on localized control method and based on extreme seeking method. First, we want to answer 2 questions through this talk. The first is how to regulate the reactive power if we have PVs in distribution feeder. The second question, we want to answer that if we don't have communication and a model, is that possible to find good settings for local water controls based on current standard? To answer these 2 questions, we have short outlines here. First, we will introduce our proposed method to do the local power loss minimization. And the second, we will do a short proof of convexity of a power losses function respect to reactive power from PV. Then we will do two case studies. One is small 4-node feeders, and the second one will move to a larger node test feeders with more series situations with high volume solar radiations. Last but not least, we will check the collaborations between local water controls and the voltage regulators. This is a publication reference. You can find more details of this presentation through this paper. First, we want to introduce water controls and organizations' current control structures. They have 3 types. They use different terms, but the structures are same. One is a centralized method. Looks like left side. They have a one controller or one center to talk with each controller and do optimizations in the central and send control the settings to all the controllers. And the other one is distributed one. In each region, we have one agent, and the agent will talk with local controllers and exchange information with neighbor agent. The last one we were focusing on is the localized method, because if we don't have communication and model, that is the only choice. We can see the advantage is that they don't need communication, no model requirement. Communication burden is very low, control interval is very quick, and the measurements only need local measurements. The disadvantage is that they don't have optimization method over there. So let's quickly review what we have in hand. Water control in IEEE 1547 gives a water control curve like this, and for each settings they give a certain range to control and change. But the disadvantage is also obviously seeing that stability issue is one thing due to the slope. The second one is steady state error due to that's the drip-based control, and the guidance is only for the range selection, and you need to very experienced for each specific requirement for your project, and definitely no optimization function. What we are looking for is we need model-free, communication-free, plug-and-play. Definitely, we can get some good results as good as centralized method. That'd be perfect. If not, we can get a very close method if we only use a local method. And also, we need this control is stable and definitely less computation burdens. To reach these goals, we first to modify this curve. They have two dimensions we can make changes. One is going up and down to change the Q0 to reduce the steady state error, make it Q0 adjustable. And the second side, we can change, second dimension is we can change the VREF from left to right. These two dimensions will be changed together in this proposed method to reach minimize our losses goal. So the proposed method have combined two ideas. One is to modify the curve we already have, and the second one is to add optimization functions. The optimization function we choose here is called extreme seeking method, which is a model-free and a perturbation-based method. That means we can combine it together to reach our proposed method, to reach our goal. Next, we will shortly introduce the extreme seeking method optimization, how it works, and how to work with the localized G-based Bolivar control code. So extreme seeking method is a self-optimization method. The first thing I want to emphasize is it will only tracking slow changes. They don't track very transient and fast changes to do optimization. The second one is it will injecting periodic perturbations. It's also very low frequency. So the advantage of this method, we can talk later. We can briefly review this diagram. In the blue dash box is the whole control logic. You can see it's very simple. The concept of this method is if we have an objective function is convex like this shape, bowl shape. If we have an inject sine wave perturbation in the system, and we will receive and also get a response from the system. When we time the perturbation and the response together, it will give us an estimation of the slope of this objective function. Then we can move step changes towards to the optimal points. So this is the concept of this method. Then move forward to our proposed method. This is our objective functions. The objective function, the first item is the local current measurement. The second item is the local voltage penalty function. We want to minimize the local current in order to reduce the local power losses. And also we want to avoid voltage violations in the system. So we have several blocks to make this control stable. This and efficient. This one is first order time delay. We call the reactive power inertia to make the control more stable. And the second part you can see in the red box is extreme seeking method. The third box is a steady state error adaptatives. Also, it will help to reduce power losses as well as to maintain voltage to a certain range. This is a control loop. And here is our distribution power system. Here we will do a short proof of convexity of the power losses functions. This is a 4-node system. We will take node 4 as an example. We will take the measurements here and also PQ here from the system, and also the Q reactive power generated or absorbed from the PV. For the left side is a single phase or 3-phase balanced system. We have a condition to hold to make sure that the objective function is convex. The interesting things we see, if P and Q is negative, means we have a reverse power flows. We still have this condition hold. For the 3-phase unbalanced system, we consider unbalance of the line and also the load unbalance. These two conditions make the equation more complex. We have a list of the condition needs to be made, but in reality we don't check this convexity, we directly implement this method and compare with a centralized method to see how the method can give us. That's a short improvement. So the first case study is the 4-node system. As we discussed before, we have local measurements current here and here for PV3 and 4, and also PQs used in PQ measurements, local PQ measurements here. We use the solar radiation profile in the red lines, and we use two different load profiles like blue dot and black dot. Blue dot is for PV4, load 4, and for black dot is for load 3. So the interesting observation is that if we use default setting from standard, we can see unstable and voltage violations if we only use local voltmeter control. And when we use proposed method, we can see the control is very stable, and also the voltage are in acceptance range, no voltage violations. And the other observation is after the first stage, the algorithm figure out which is the good operation range, it was tracking the reactive power load for in the range to reduce power losses. That's the interesting observation. So then we move to a larger system, to the 1 to 3 node system, and we consider unbalanced node and single phase PVs and 3-phase PVs, and we have different signs for each node, and also we list the load at each node. So you can see unbalanced over there, and it's more for distributed in the system. Choose more serious scenarios like high variant solar radiations, and also we choose the blue dashed lines reactive profiles for all loads. The result is very good compared with centralized method and default method. The green dot lines is the default. We can see the power loss is a little bit higher than other two, and the red line is the centralized method we are showing here. We can see our method is tracking the optimal solutions. So the next one is we will check the proposed method, how to coordinate with existing regulators, even when they don't have communication between each other. So if we remember, we come back a little bit. We have these main regulators and this another main regulators here. One is 150, one is 160. We have tap changes showing here in orange lines, and the voltage is shown as the blue lines. So as we can see, our VREF tracking, if we have regulator enabled, the voltage is pretty flat, and the tracking range is variance is very small. When we disable the regulator controls, we have a higher variations of the VREF, but still can make the voltage within that range. So also we compare power losses between centralized and the proposed method with regulators. You can see the tracking result is pretty good with the optimal solution. This is our observation. That's a short summary of this method. We propose the voltmeter control localized based using a smart inverter of the PVs with two goals. One is to avoid voltage regulation violation issues, and then we can also reduce power losses. We do a short convexity conditions for power losses, and also we make sure the control stability improvement compared with default settings. The performance with a latency voltage regulators we can see the impacts of the regulators. We can also reach pretty good power losses result compared with optimal power loss solution. Thank you. Welcome to questions.
All right. Thank you, Hongda. So do we have any questions for Hongda?
Yeah, Hongda, I have only one question. So, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. So, the question is about actually when you consider the different load profiles and then taking the existing standard VVC, and then you see the instability that is in slide number 10, right?
Yes.
If I'm not wrong. Yeah. So, but what I observed from the typical feeder practices, so I didn't see any kind of violations or any kind of issues, even they take the current practice in place. So what's the reason behind it? I mean, what could be the reason?
Yes, that's a great question. So for tube-based control, for industrial implement, they normally set as a 5% tube in active and reactive power control to avoid any like this high control oscillations. Relatively small number. So if you know that when the tube slope is very not so deep, the regulation is not strong. But when we have a slope is very deep, they may have a control issues. So the principle behind that is the slope of the tube. If you have deep tube, they may have some instabilities over there. For the principle of, yeah, go ahead. I can continue that. For this two method, if we can see go up and down and left and right, the principle is to change the slope of the operating range. As well, we will find the good slope range based on optimal solution, optimal objective functions we can optimize there, and also maintain this slope not too deep and too slow to make changes. So that's the principle of this measure, to make it stable as well as reduce power losses.
Yeah, thank you, Honda. So that means is the slope is directly from the variation coming at inverter level, right? That's like the solar irradiation level inverter. If that is too high, I mean the ramp up and ramp down, is that what you're going to take it as into account when you consider the slopes?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. So let's come back to the slope to the curve this curve. So we can see they have a Qmin and Qmax. This Qmin and Qmax is time changing because active power generation from PV are changing. So the reserve because the inverter size is already there. The reactive power reserve can be changing based on active power portions. So when this changes, it also can change the slope. So the control needs to adapt to that changes as well. So as you mentioned, if we have more active power injection from PVs, the Qmin and Qmax will be small. So the slope may be small. So the regulation, the reactive power generation from fixed curve may be even smaller. So if you don't change this curve, so that's why we need this curve to be adapted.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Hongda, can you talk about some of the different kind of how this method compares to other volt-var? Oh, there's another question in here first. In this application, does the reactive power take priority over the real power? Asked another way, can you control algorithm curtail real power during peak solar periods?
That's a great question. So in the current stage, we definitely take active power priority. So that means we will ensure active power injection and use the remaining capacity of the inverter to generate the reactive power and do the regulation. If if you want to create active power, definitely we have more reserve for reactive power. But it depends on the owner's performance. If we have, definitely we have more range to play with. It's better for power loss reductions. But we need to pay attention. That's also the limit of this method. If we don't have a good range of the reactive power Qmax, we cannot to maintain power losses is optimal. So conversion of this peak, that's good, but it depends how many space we can play with based on utility or owner setting. Thank you.
Okay, back to my question. I don't think there are any other questions in the chat. So, so can you talk a little bit about how their different volt-var control? We'll actually talk about some different. We've talked about some different ones in our different sessions. Can you share a little bit where you see expand a little bit more on the opportunities based on the algorithm and the work you did?
Yes, thank you. That's a great question. Let's come back to this table. Normally we have centralized control and distributed control. They have different requirements, and the advantage of this method is no requirement for communication. We can implement just a plug and play to make sure local object to function bridge. And for other methods centralized, they definitely need all communication infrastructures, definitely need accurate system models, and the communication will going higher and higher when systems become bigger and bigger. Definitely control interval, and that means time consumptions for communication may be longer when your system is become larger and larger, and measurements is a lot. For distributed method, definitely have some advantages between centralized and localized, and it also needs information, at least a range information or sub-area information over there, and communication structures to that. So that's we want our control is fast. We want it as less as possible and easy to implement, and also less measurements as possible. For opportunity for this method, we can use centralized or distributed control in normal operation. When we lose communications, the controllers can automatically switch to local. So it also can reach some certain optimal levels. This method can pretty good in island mode and microgrids in island. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. So, time for one more question. Any more questions? All right. Thank you, Hongda. And again, we appreciate you switching schedules for us where we had to move things around. We're just asking each speaker to put their name and paper title in the chat, just so people have that if they want to reach out to you about additional questions. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, our next presentation will be by Soho Paul from IIT Roorkee. And so I'm going to turn it, and he's actually having two presentations. So we'll have one from him now and then one later in the session. So I'll turn it over to him for next to present.